Don't forget to leave a like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get into today's video. Hey guys, thanks for joining me here on another episode of Crossing the Line. Today we're going to take a look at the disturbing story coming out of WA where farmers and people are losing their rights to their own land due to Indigenous affairs, and it's something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of, especially if the vote yes goes through, that is coming up here in Australia in the next few months. Now, the referendum, whether you want to vote yes or no on it, I don't think anyone really has any idea what is going on, if even the government knows. They refuse to give us answers on anything to do with the voice. They refuse to give us answers on what their powers are going to be and how it will play out. So I can tell you what, no matter what, I will not be voting yes to something that I know nothing about and that they are seemingly actively hiding what they have and what they are going to do with the voice. They are actively going out of their way to hide and to take down anyone who's voting no or promoting the no vote. They go out of their way to attack and slander those people. And anytime that happens, especially when it's the media or the government doing it, I highly doubt they've got good intentions. And we can just see where it's going with a few stories here in Western Australia. Now, WA farmers are losing their rights to a tiny taste of life under the voice of Parliament. Sky News host Rowan Dean says Western Australian farmers now require a permit in negotiation with the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act if land is disturbed to a depth of 50 millimetres. So 50 millimetres disturbing the earth. If you dig a post hole, if you put a mailbox in, if you, make a raised garden bed, if you do anything on the land that requires digging of more than 50 millimetres of dirt in Western Australia, you are now required by law to go and get a permit from the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage. And I don't know whether it's just an entire Western Australia thing or whether it's individual parts of Western Australia. You've got to contact each individual Indigenous tribe of that area. And we've already seen the disturbing ramifications of this being imposed. We've had a tree planting event that was, I think it was about $9 million and for the entire thing. And they were held to ransom by the local Indigenous Affairs Office or Aboriginal Corporation, for $2.5 million. And we'll read that story here from the Daily Mail. Critical tree planting events are cancelled for a newly formed Aboriginal corporation demanded a $2.5 million payment for approval as frustration grows over new cultural heritage laws. WA's cultural heritage laws create more and more havoc. Tree planting event along Perth River is cancelled. The Whadjuk Aboriginal Corporation reportedly demands $2.5 million. Now, as of reading of this news, this has been revoked. The man who has asked for that $2.5 million has actually been fired from the Whadjuk Aboriginal Corporation. And rightfully so. But the reason I believe they've fired him and the reason they have renounced it and withdrawn this $2.5 million payment approval is because they saw where this was going with the news. They saw people like me and people like Sky News getting a hold of the Daily Mail. And they know that this is what's going to happen when the voice goes through. And these things popping up now before the voice is in place, before they've nailed that coffin shut, is detrimental to the yes vote. And they know things like this popping up now, before they're ready for it, before it's enshrined in our constitution or enshrined in our law, they cannot get away with it. And they know it will do nothing but harm to the yes vote. Two major tree planting events have been cancelled following a demand for Aboriginal Corporation for a payment of $2.5 million in exchange for their approval. Landcare volunteers were meant to roll up their sleeves and plant 5,500 seedlings along Perth's Canning River on the weekend. But the events never went ahead following a $2.5 million demand for a newly formed Whadjuk Aboriginal Corporation, sparking confusion about Western Australia's new Aboriginal heritage laws. The chief executive, David Collard, told Landcare groups that the plannings couldn't proceed due to the Indigenous group's ongoing dispute with the WA government over funding. The decision has bewildered conservation groups, and the community leaders, including our 4 local mayors. There is now grave fears the seedlings are now at risk of dying, go to waste. We have got to get them in the ground and make most of the wet soil, Southeast Regional Landcare's Stephen Johnson told 7 News. We've got a whole lot of land groups across Perth and WA whose work is critical to the fulfillment of the Commonwealth, state and local government environmental objectives. It is not just a nice thing to have, it is critical. Pat Hart said that there are 4 dams on the Canning is under real issues. Time is, we can't wait. We have to keep going forward. It comes after the WA's revamped Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act came into effect through tougher penalties for damaging sites of traditional significance. The problem is, any site where it is habitable, like say rivers, billabongs, creeks, dams, things like that here in Australia, because it is such an arid, dry place, especially over in WA, that is where you were going to have Aboriginal communities in the past living, because it is close to water. So anywhere along a water estuary or something like that, that is generally going to be deemed as culturally significant to Aboriginals. And I know the tribe that my family comes from, it's the same thing there. They're all hanging around the water source. Obviously, anytime something like this is going to happen, if the voice goes through, there's going to be someone there with a hand out saying, pay me, pay me, pay me. And this is just one of the very first cases of this happening that has been blown up on media like this, but this happens every single day in Aboriginal communities. I've gone and worked in the Northern Territory in Nullumboy with Rio Tinto had a mine site. Anytime you wanted to go onto a beach, you had to pay $65 to the local Aboriginal community. Anytime a truck or a road train drove over a certain road, I think it was $75 a road train, they had to pay to the local Aboriginal community. This community was getting millions and millions of dollars a year from Rio Tinto, from the Australian government, and from taxpayers and things like that. Which, you know, fair enough. Rio Tinto is sitting there, they're exporting all that bauxite and they're sending it overseas. It's now shut down due to Australia's piss poor management of our resources and China. But, you know, fair enough. I'd rather the money go to the local community, especially instead of it going overseas. That's great. But when it's coming to normal parts of Australia where the majority of our population live, like on the East Coast and some of the West Coast, and anytime you dig a hole in the ground, you're going to have to pay Indigenous people money. This is going to blow out of proportion so quickly. You will not be able to grade a road. You will not be able to fill a pothole. You will not be able to put a fence post in. You will not be able to burn off in your own property. You will not be able to clear fire tracks. We're already seeing that in Victoria, where Daniel Andrews has banned the use of chainsaws in national parks. This is insanity. We have one of the worst fires known to man over the last couple of years, and now they go and ban the use of chainsaws and clearing brush in Victoria. It's insanity. And along with the stupid regulations the government are putting in, if the voice overlay that with their own regulations, their own cultural significance thing, it's going to tie it up with red tape that will never be undone. Even at the end of the day, if they said, come in and they said, yep, obviously you can plant those trees. It's good for the environment. We need to do that to protect the wetlands and protect the banks and, you know, take care of the river. They're planting native trees anyway, obviously. So it's not going to hurt the environment. And it's obviously done by, it's done by Landcare. So it's obviously going to be beneficial to the local environment. So we'll waive that $2.5 million fee. That's not going to happen every single time. And the only time, it's basically just a bribe. You have to give us money for you to do something on the land that you own or that we perceive to have some sort of cultural significance. We'll keep reading here. At least 3 community tree planting events have been shut down since the new laws came into effect a fortnight ago. Frustrated mayors have pleaded with the WA government to step in and resolve the issue. We're standing here today in solidarity with some of the environmental groups saying that someone needs to clarify the legislation. It has become somewhat of a mess, City of Canning Mayor Patrick Hall said. Aboriginal Affairs Minister Tony Booty released a statement to insist the matter had nothing to do with WA's modernised laws. The Aboriginal Affairs Minister for WA refused to step in and help and sort out the situation. He just said it had nothing to do with the new laws. but it only popped up after the new laws came into effect. He then personally called for concerned community leaders, including Senator Hall, to try to reassure them that that was the case. See, he's paying lip service saying, oh, it's not the new laws that are doing it. You're the Aboriginal Affairs Minister. You're supposed to go in and sort these kind of things out. And you just step back and let it resolve itself. The council, as the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Council, or whatever it is, society, has since fired the bloke who wanted to basically get a $2.5 million bribe because they could just see how bad this was going to look for them. I mean, it's not like they were trying to stop someone building a bridge or someone putting in a skyrise or something like that, or putting in wind turbines. They were literally planting trees to help the environment. But building a bridge, building a culvert, there is a man in WA who is facing jail time or fines of up to $20,000 for building a culvert or a bridge or a driveway over his own property because the local Aboriginal people deemed the area where he built it as part of their cultural heritage. Now, in Australia, with cultural and Aboriginal heritage, things aren't written down by Indigenous people. They are told through stories, and that is basically the only way that Aboriginals and the Indigenous people of Australia have kept a track of their heritage and history, is being passed down from generation to generation. So a lot of shit can be misconstrued, lied about, and faked, basically, because there is no actual evidence of it other than someone saying that it's true. It's very, very hard to prove. I mean, besides going up there and digging up and finding Aboriginal bones, or there's not much relics to find. I mean, Aboriginals are the only Indigenous community never to have invented a bow and arrow, so you're not even going to find arrow tips and things like that. So it's very hard to find any actual proof of Aboriginal heritage or Aboriginal significance on that part of land. But it always seems to pop up where something major is going on or where there's money involved. Locally, there was a massive project. It was held up for months and months and months by local... they weren't even actual local Indigenous people. They came from another state, came over here and started claiming land rights and claiming things that obviously weren't true. I won't go into details about that story because I don't know too much about it. But they were not even from the local area. They are not in the Indigenous tribe of the area. I know because the Indigenous tribe of the area is my Indigenous tribe, and where my father's family comes from. And they had nothing to do with it. They just saw some dollar signs, came in, camped in that area, made a whole bunch of mess. When they got dragged out by police, they left piles of garbage and disgusting like shanty town house things and just rubbish everywhere. They left that there on this land they apparently cared so much about after the local Aboriginal community and the local Aboriginal elders were already briefed on the situation of the project, and they gave it the thumbs up months or if not years ago now. It was never an issue for the local Aboriginal Indigenous community, It was only an issue for these protesters and vagrants that came from another state to try to get money out of the government. A Western Australian man is facing $20,000 fine and possible jail time over a law he had no idea he broke when he constructed his new driveway and creek crossing. Tony Maddox has lived in his property in Tuday, in 85 kilometres northeast of Perth, for the past 9 years, and he said he was shocked after the neighbour's complaint led to criminal charges being pressed against him. "It's knocked the stuffing out of me," he told the ABC Midwest and Wheatbelt. I can't believe I'm being charged with a criminal offence for an act that I know nothing about. I just find that extraordinary. Mr. Maddox's new driveway and culvert at Burong Brook is allegedly in breach of WA's Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, which investigators of the State Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage visiting the property to inform him of the illegal move. You see the culvert there. He's obviously going to build that up so he has access to his property when it's wet season or something like that. According to the prosecution, the site was significantly altered and damaged by the works, which also included large amounts of silt being removed, bore water being pumped into the brook, and construction on an artificial lake and fountain, ABC reported. If it goes through, it'll affect every single farmer in WA, Mr. Maddox, a real estate agent, said. Every farmer crosses creeks in their daily activities. There is going to be an awful lot of permission seeking going on. I've got a duty of care to comply with the Act. Why haven't they got a duty of care to tell me the Act exists? Mr. Maddox told radio station 6PR that he had previously been at a gravel creek crossing for the property before he moved in, but weather would wash the gravel away and leave him unable to access his house and sheds. He said he had laid concrete over the bitumen almost a year ago, allowing him to have all-weather crossing. I love my property, he said, saying animals have now returned to the brook. He has a little sanctuary. The Booyarang Brook is an important part of the local Aboriginal mythology and is said to be one of the waterways around Perth that is home to the Waggle or the rainbow serpent. See, it's another Dreamtime story that someone just comes up and says that it's got something significant to do with that area. There's no evidence a lot of time. I don't know exactly about this Western Australian case here. He could very well have disturbed the Indigenous and heritage land there. But this is his own private land that he has bought and paid for. And now there's an outside Aboriginal Heritage Society saying that he's destroying their local significant relics and Dreamtime rainbow serpent fucking stories. It's insanity. The previous Department of Water and Environmental Regulation report found Booyarang Brook home to be home to fish, crayfish, southwestern snakeneck turtles and frogs. Mr. Madden will front the court on March 20th. If he's found guilty, he could be sentenced up to 9 months jail. A conviction on his record will also see him lose his real estate license, which says is beyond his comprehension. I am broken, he said. This is where it's leading to. If the voice goes ahead, farmers will have their whole farm cut out and taken out from underneath of them. If he goes to jail for 9 months, I would not be surprised if the local Aboriginal community heritage society ends up with his property. If he seems to have damaged the significant Indigenous artifact or heritage site, whatever it is, they will just say, well, we want it back now, it's ours. And if the act goes through, if the act of the voice goes through, we are going to be seeing more and more of this. You will not be able to go to Aboriginal sacred sites, like you will not be able to go up to the Cape. That has just been handed over to Aboriginal community up there. You will not be able to drive through there. You will not be able to go to places like, I think the Fraser Island, they just changed the name back to the Aboriginal name. They're trying to change the name of Brisbane, a major city in Australia, to the Aboriginal name, which I wouldn't even know what that is. But this is just the start, and this is where they're trying to divide the country. If they want to see race riots in Australia, that's what's going to happen if the voice goes through. Because if you get told you are not worthy, you are not allowed to do something because you're a white person in a black person's country, I don't see how that isn't racist. It's not as, pardon the pun, but black and white as it is in America, where you can see, obviously, these African Americans were brought over here on slave ships. White colonizers came to Australia against their will, and the majority of them were convicts. We didn't come here to... No one wanted to come here. It's a terrible, desolate place. Imagine how terrible it was back then. We were dragged here in balls and chains on terrible conditioned ships. Slave ships were just as bad as these ships, if not... It was terrible human conditions. No one chose to come here. It was a penal colony, except for places over in WA. I don't think WA was a penal colony, but they came here and they massacred the local Indigenous because the Indigenous obviously freaked out when the whole bunch of white people landed on the shores and they started killing each other. And now we have to pretend that we're sorry about that because you're white. But how does that work for people like me, whose father's Aboriginal, whose family's Aboriginal, but they have white skin? It doesn't make sense here in Australia. Like reparations and things like that in America kind of do, but I obviously don't agree with reparations. But you're going to find a very hard time to convince the Australian public that this is not a racist agenda, but this voice vote. It is insanely racist. Saying that we have to apologise to ancestors of people that no one in our lifetime has done anything to. I mean, the reason I am white is because of taking away Aboriginals into white communities and try to breed the black out of them. That's one of the reasons I am white. It is an insanely racist idea to say that we need to start paying Aboriginals rent for the land that we live on. I bought this land that I live on fair and square. Instead of creating a racial division in this country like they do every time they get a chance to, it's like with Anzac Day, they're trying to shut down Anzac Day, they're trying to shut down Australia Day, they're trying to call it Invasion Day. Every chance they get, they try to divide people between black and white, gay and straight, Christian, non-Christian, Muslim and Christian, whatever it is. The media and the government set to divide us. And they know, especially over the last few years with the COVID and the lockdowns and the vaccine mandates and things like that, they know if we're divided, we're weak. If we stand up to them, we're strong and we can shut them down. They do not want that. They want us to be divided and they want us to hate each other. It is a very simple thing to do to stir hate. If you're the federal government and you oversee the entire country, it's very easy to stir up hate in a little tiny spot and then have that spread across the country like wildfire. That is what The Voice is. It's divisive. It's a waste of money. If they want to know what people think about it, all they've got to do is go and read any of the comment section on Facebook or Twitter that talk about The Voice. No one wants it, but I'm terrified that it's going to go through. Either they're going to fudge the numbers or they're just going to say, look, we don't care that you voted no. We're just going to put it through anyway because it's the right thing to do, because that's what their agenda is. That's what they're going to use it for. And if it doesn't go through, they're going to use it for, and they say, oh, okay, Australia said no, we do not want The Voice. They will just use that as another stick to beat people over the head with and pretend it's racism. It's not racism to want everyone to be equal under the one flag. I don't even think we should have an Aboriginal flag. I think we should use the Australian flag that our troops have fought and died for. The Aboriginal flag, I don't really care if you fly it. It's not going to offend anyone. But we shouldn't be having it on Parliament House. We shouldn't be flying it in Sydney on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It's divisive. It's tearing the country into black and white. And the minority of people who want The Voice, it is a tiny minority who are generally communist from the Greens Party, or just people who want reparations. It's disgusting. And the government, no matter which way we fall on the yes or no vote with this, the government is going to use it to divide us. If people vote no, which I think the majority of people that I've talked to, I don't know anyone who wants to vote yes, honestly. And I talk to a wide range of people. But if we vote no and they say no, then the government's going to say you're all a bunch of racists. And I would not be surprised if they just push it through anyway. What do you guys think anyway? Are you worried about this voice coming through in Australia? Are you worried about farmers like this guy going to jail over building a driveway on his own land? Because you point this out to people and no one seems to take notice until it's too late here in Australia. There's a lot of laziness here in Australia that no one seems to care about until it's too late, and they go, "Oh well, she'll be right, mate." "She'll be right, mate" is sinking our country. It's going to kill us. That attitude here in Australia will end us as a country. We're going to be simple pawn for the WEF or NATO or something like that. We're going to be cuckolded and have to kiss the feet of Indigenous people in this country. If The Voice went through, it would probably help me out. I'd probably get funding. They're talking about paying rent. Does that mean because I'm Aboriginal and I'm going to get rent? Does that mean the white people are going to start paying me? Does that mean I have to pay myself? No one knows. What do you guys think about it anyway? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in another episode. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.